Hey folks, thanks for joining me today. My name is Roger Lopez. I'm part of the technical marketing team here at Red Hat, and I'm very excited because today I'm going to show you a demo on how you can use event-driven Ansible with Red Hat OpenShift. Specifically, what I'm going to be showcasing is, for example, how to do volume snapshots when you're looking at your application. So in this particular example, we're going to be running an application that's running on Red Hat OpenShift. And when this application goes off and gets created, we're going to actually use event-driven Ansible to go in and take a snapshot of our persistent volume claim for us within our application. And the nice thing about this is you can even take this a step further in the future. For example, maybe you want your snapshots to happen at a regular cadence, whether that's weekly, hourly, monthly. You have a lot of options. So I hope you enjoy the demo, and let's get started. All right, so let's get started with this lab. So effectively what you're looking at here is we have a lab where we're going to be showcasing event-driven Ansible with Red Hat OpenShift, specifically showcasing how to write an Ansible rulebook, which allows us to basically watch for a particular event and then act on that event, right? And in this environment, what we're going to see is we have a Ansible automation platform that has some templates that we're going to be using. We're specifically going to be using the EDA OpenShift Exercise 1. We have our Red Hat OpenShift environment that is running Ansible Automation Platform. And here I have an image of showcasing the playbook that we're going to be running to do the snapshots. So the first thing that we need to do in order to get into this lab and start doing is we need to go and access our Bastion host. So in this particular case, I'm going to go in, I'm going to log in to this Bastion host, and we're going to provide the password to the environment. And what we want to do now is we want to clone the repository that has all the pieces for the lab that I'm going to be showcasing. So in this case, we're going to be taking my rlopez 1-3 demos repository. And within this repository, you're going to see the different demos. Specifically, the one that we're going to be doing is the EDA OCP. And I have these different exercises. And we're going to be doing specifically exercise 1, which is all about snapshot creation. So now that we have that repository up and running, the next thing we want to do is we actually want to install Ansible Rulebook. Now, you can install Ansible Rulebook by default essentially on the system, or in this case I'm going to actually be using a container image that already has Ansible Rulebook installed for me, so I don't actually have to go through that process. So I'm going to go and use Podman to go and pull that image, and as that goes through that process, it's going to basically allow me to run the Ansible Rulebook command via the command line, which is what we want to do. So while that's happening, let's look at the playbook, right? So what are we doing here? So basically, even though we're using event-driven Ansible is looking for a particular event, and then it needs to do some sort of action. So that action could be a job template, or it could be an Ansible playbook. This is the playbook that we will be using within the job template. So in this particular case, what this playbook is doing is it's looking for a persistent volume claim to be in a bound state. So we're using the Kubernetes Core K8's info module right here. And this particular module, we're going to be watching for a specific kind. We're going to be watching for a persistent volume claim. And we're also looking for it to be in a bound state. So effectively what this is doing is waiting for this persistent volume claim to be in a bound state prior to us trying to create a snapshot for it. And it's going to attempt to do this at least 5 times. Once it's bound, it's going to go in and actually create the volume snapshot. And it's going to use the Kubernetes Core K8's module. And this particular module, it looks similar to if you've ever done anything with Kubernetes and YAML files, kind of similar as far as it's taking a definition, API version, kind, metadata. We're providing all these details, and we're using a special variable called Ansible_EDA, and Ansible_EDA is what allows us to go in and watch for a specific event. In this case, we're trying to get a name, provide the snapshot, a date for a unique timestamp, and what namespace we're looking for in our particular case. And then of course, if our volume snapshot was not able to be created or the bound state failed, we'd actually go into a rescue block showing the event debug status, and why the persistent volume claim wasn't bound. And of course, if this does pass, you're going to get the volume snapshot details and more information about the volume snapshot name and the namespace that was used. And we kind of get a better representation of that when you look at this kind of image here. So this particular image that you're looking at is kind of showing you what happens throughout that playbook process, right? So check if the PVC is bound. If it's no, we're going to keep retrying. If it's yes, we're going to create the volume snapshot, get the volume snapshot debug details, and then we're going to get a debug message with the volume snapshot name and its namespace. Of course, if the issue continues to be no, eventually it's going to fail. It's going to go through the rescue block, give you information about the event itself, the status, and why the PVC did not bind. So now that we have the Ansible rulebook container image created, the next thing we want to do is write our first Ansible rulebook. So if you look over here, this is an example rulebook, right? All rulebooks look similar. They take a source, they take a rule and an action. Effectively here, we're going to be using a specific source to look at our Kubernetes events. And then the rules are essentially our if statements. If you see this type of event, let's do some particular action, right? So in this case, I already have the rule book already written, but for the purposes of going through the exercise, let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go in and create this particular exercise 1 rulebook.yaml. And in here, we're going to see this particular piece. And what we're going to do is we're going to modify this example rulebook to have the features that we need. So I'm going to save this real quick. And to save time on writing, I'm going to copy our solutions exercise. And I'm going to copy it to exercise 1 rulebook. And now if we look at exercise 1 rulebook, you can see what we're doing here is we are creating a snapshot for any newly added PVC resource. And we're using this Sabre 1041 EDA Kubernetes source. This is a particular source that was created by one of our colleagues here at Red Hat that lets us watch Kubernetes events. We're actually going to have a community version for Kubernetes once the Ansible Automation Platform 2.4 releases. But in this case, we're looking for persistent volume claim kind. Our rule is looking to create a snapshot. Our event type is when we see a snapshot added, we want to take an action. And this particular action that we're going to be taking is to run a job template. In this case, the name of the job template is called EDA OpenShift Exercise 1. And if we go to our Ansible Automation Platform templates, we can see that this template has already been pre-populated and created for us. So now that we have that, we are going to go off and run this particular rulebook. So what we want to do is we're going to go to this particular location of my repository, and we're going to run the rulebook container image. And I have this little setup script that I created, which is to simplify the process of essentially installing the packages of Kubernetes, request, the Sabre 1041.EDA collection. So all the things that I need in order to properly run this demo. Of course, you could create a container image that has all those things pre-populated for you, but I didn't do that in this particular case. Now that I am within the container image, one thing I want to do is I want to log into this specific OpenShift cluster that I'm trying to interact with. So here I'm going to be doing this OC login, which uses the token for this OpenShift environment as well as the server I'm trying to connect to. So once I do that, I want to connect to my connection. I'm now using project's default. I'm going to change to the exercise directory within the container image. And here I have the exercises where I have that particular rulebook, and I can confirm my rulebook looks as I expect it to. And yes, it does. And now what I want to do is I want to run my rulebook. So the rulebook takes this particular command, Ansible rulebook. I'm passing it an inventory. I'm telling it what rulebook I want to use. I'm telling it that I want to have verbosity to see the output. I'm then providing it a controller URL that you see here. And then I'm providing it also a controller token. So the controller token is effectively what's allowing me to log into this particular automation controller environment and run the automation job against if this event gets triggered. So when I run this, we're going to see it taking all these things into action. We're seeing the running Kubernetes EDA source. So it's effectively loaded and now running. And now what we want to do is we want to go and create an application that creates persistent volume claims. So for simplicity, I decided to use the Rocket Chat application, which is known for being able to chat in real time with your team members, business colleagues, so forth. But we're not actually using the chat part. We're essentially we're going to be using this just for the deployment of an application, which then we can go off and create snapshots against. So on this bottom terminal, I'm going to log into this Bastion host once more. And I am going to need to get the password of this environment. So the password of this environment is right here. So now that I'm logged in, I can kind of scroll back down to where I was. We're going to create this Rocket Chat. So now what I want to do is I want to make sure I'm logged in within this Bastion host to my OpenShift cluster. I'm now logged in, and I'm going to go off and create a new namespace for the Rocket Chat app that I'm going to be deploying, right? So this could be anything for any application that you're deploying. So now that I have that, I'm going to go into the demos directory. I'm going to go to my EDA OCP, and I'm going to go to my exercise 1, right? Because that's where I am, and that's where all my exercises are. So what I want to do now is I want to deploy my application. So when I go off to deploy my application, I'm going to use the OC create command. This application has all the details that we need to install the application. When I go off and run this, here this is going to go off and create all these pieces. And if you notice on the top here, the Ansible rulebook got kicked off. We actually see a running job template running. And this is because we went off and created the Rocket Chat app. So if we go here and we go to our administrator section, and we can go to, for example, our projects, we can go to Rocket Chat. We can see that we actually have Rocket Chat location here located. If we click on it, we might be able to see the application up and running already, but it might take a little time for it to come up. But one thing, as it's coming up, one thing we can do is we can look at persistent volume claims, and we can see that there is a Rocket Chat data claim that's now bound, and it's of 10 gig. So if we go to our Ansible automation and we go to jobs, we can actually see that our EDA OpenShift exercise 1 went off and ran, right? So what this happened was it went into the system, it saw that the persistent volume claim was bound, it created the volume snapshot, and now it gave us details about it. It tells us that we're making a snapshot for the Rocket Chat data claim snapshot, and it giving it this particular date. Told us what namespace it's on, which is the Rocket Chat. And if we go back to the environment, we can see this is where the persistent volume claim is. Now, to confirm that this snapshot was indeed created as we expected it to, we can actually use the OC get volume snapshot command. So if we do the OC volume snapshot command, we can actually see that the snapshot was indeed created and is actually up and running. And we could see that it was only created just about 68 seconds ago. So this kind of gives you the process of what it takes in order to run event-driven Ansible with, for example, with OpenShift, and why this is important, or how you can expand on this. Imagine you have your application, and sure, you're creating a persistent volume claim when a persistent volume is added, but now that you have that creation, you can actually add schedules to that particular job and make it run, let's say, every hour, every day, every week, depending on what your cadence is for backing up your environments. So this kind of just opens up that idea of how you can enable OpenShift and Ansible event-driven Ansible. And I'm actually going to showcase a few more demos and how you can use both of them together. So be on the lookout for that, and hope you enjoyed this demo.